Hi everyone, Titus here for another Unreal Engine tutorial, and today we're continuing our Pong mini-series with part 4. We'll create the heads-up display and leverage our game manager that we created in the earlier vid. Let's not waste any time and just jump right into it. Alright, so we had some test code left over. We're first going to open up our BP player, and then we had some code where when we pressed the spacebar it would spawn the projectile, so we're just going to delete that because we no longer need it. And then we're also going to open up our blueprint for the projectile, and we had some tick code to show the projectile's current velocity. So we no longer need that, so we'll delete it, compile and save, and then we're good to kind of start over. Now we're going to right click, and under user interface we'll create a widget blueprint. Then we'll just choose user widget, and I'm going to call it WBP underscore HUD. I can then double click to open that up, and we're going to add just a couple things. The first one is a canvas panel. You can just drag that in. This is where we can basically kind of use as like a sticking point for adding all the other individual elements, and we can use the anchor off the canvas panel and position items appropriately and size them, so it makes it a little bit easier. Once we have our canvas panel, the first thing I'm going to do is add a rich text block. So I'll drag that here, and then I'm going to go to my anchors, and I want the text element to be basically full center of the screen. So I'll select this option here, and then I'll hold Control and select the option again, and then I'll go back and hold Shift and select the option again. And it basically centers it kind of perfectly for me. Now if we add in some text, like I'll just add some basically lines, you'll notice it basically adds in these blocks, but they're kind of like horizontal. So kind of what we need to do is first I'm going to justify them center, and then if I scroll down to the wrapping, I want to auto wrap the text, and then if you look at the wrap text at, if the value is 0 or negative, no wrapping occurs, so I'll just set that to 1. And then under the advanced, we got to change it from default wrapping to allow per character wrapping. And then we should notice that it kind of lines it up center. Now in the traditional or classic Pong game, there's a line down the center that represents the net. I figured the best way to do that is just do it through text, and we'll add it as a widget HUD interface, so it'll kind of just be simulated. It won't actually be like a physical thing. But you'll notice something weird. It's just this weird purple alpha Latin thing. That's because we have no text style set created for it. So basically what a rich text block allows you to do is you can customize a data asset that has specific font elements, and then you can target those through code and kind of change them. So like if you think of like a project or a game that has a text widget or an element on it, and then certain text is white, and then some of the text might stand out, it might be red, or it might bounce. You know, that's basically kind of what this will allow you to do. So under the text style set, we're going to hit the drop down, and we're going to select data table. I got to choose a location to save. I'm just going to select my content, and I'll just leave it as a new data table. That's fine. And then for the row structure, I'm going to use rich text style row. Then I'll click OK, and then I have my data asset selected there. Now I can hit the little folder icon, brings me to the element, and I can double click to open it up. And this is where we can actually define our kind of like the text settings basically. So we can click the plus sign to add a new element, and then in the text style I have a font option. I think for the font I'll use maybe 40, and then for the font family I'll just use Roboto, and then I want to change the color from pink to white. Now if I save that and I go back to the HUD and I compile, you'll notice nothing changes. For some reason, I don't know if this is a bug or what, but the row element has to be defined as default. If you don't have a default row element, Unreal doesn't know to use it. So we can basically right click and rename, or choose F2. And we'll just call this default. And then we have to save the data asset. And then when you go back to the widget blueprint, you have to hit compile. And then you'll notice it'll replace those blocks with the text style that you defined. So then it looks like I just need a few more lines, so I can maybe just add one more, and I think that probably looks good. So that's basically going to act as my, like the net, I guess I should say. The next thing we can do is just add a regular text element. I'll add that in the canvas panel. I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to call this one maybe player 1 score. So we'll do player 1 underscore score. Now, the important part with the text elements, since these are going to be controlled through code, is we need to check the box to tell it that it's a variable. That's how we can basically adjust it. Now for the text, I'm going to assign this as null. And then for my anchor, I'll leave it in the top left, that's fine. For the positioning, I'll maybe do 50 on the X and maybe 15 on the Y. And then for the size, let's maybe make this 140, so it's a little bit bigger. And then maybe I'll check the box for size to content. And I think that looks fine. Now the next thing we can do is just right click on the player 1 score and duplicate it. So it'll keep those same settings, except on the anchor, I can select the right side. Then I can go back to anchor, hold control, and then I can go back to the anchor and hold shift. And then it'll kind of position it appropriately. And then this time I'll go -50, and then we'll go 15 on the Y. So it's positioned kind of perfectly, and it's already a variable. I do need to rename it. I want this to be the player 2 score. So we'll call it like that. Okay, so now we have the basics of our widget set up. We just need to code it. So if you select graph in the top right corner, you'll notice you have your event graph, and you can begin actually setting up the code. We're not going to be using pre-construct or construct or tick or anything. I think we'll create some custom events, and we'll just control it that way. So right click, do add custom event. We'll call this one set score. And then we'll add another custom event. And we'll call this one update score. And they're basically going to do the same thing. You could probably get away with just creating one, but I think just make it organized. We'll have to. We want to grab our player 1 score, so we'll hold control, drag it out, and then we'll hold control, drag player 2 out. So these are the text variables. So that's, these items here. So now that we have these scores, we can pull off them and do a set text. And then I'll do that for this one as well. Set text. And then we can select both the elements, press Control D to duplicate them. And then we can pass this in over here. And we need to figure out the text that we're passing in. This is going to be the score. So that's going to come from the game manager. Because remember, we set up the game manager variables to store the player 1 and player 2 score. So the way we can pass this through into the widget is on the events, you can define inputs. So we'll hit the little plus sign, and we'll just have a placeholder. We'll call this player 1 score. And that's going to be of type integer, because you have to match data types. And then the next one will be player 2 score. And then when you do that, it creates these little inputs for the event. So when we call the event from the game manager, we can pass in the values, and it'll pass it in to this event here. So then if we pass this through here, it'll automatically make the conversion for us. And then this one will be player 2. And we can double click, add a reroute node, keep it organized. and that's pretty much good from there. So kind of the same thing on the update score. We'll select it. We'll add our 2 inputs. First one will be player 1 score, and second one will be player 2 score. And then I'll just pass this into player 1, and we'll pass this one into player 2. Add our little reroute node, and then we're looking pretty good. So that's pretty much going to be the widget. We just need to set up the code to instantiate the widget and then pass the values in. Because right now if I play, even though we have the widget set up, you'll notice nothing really does or kind of works there, right? So we can go into our game manager, and then under the event begin play, we will drag this over here. Let's give ourselves a little bit of space. And I'm going to drag this out like so. So when I pull off the begin play, we can do create widget. The widget I want to create is the HUD that we just made. Once I create the HUD, I want to create a reference to it. So we can basically right click, promote to variable, call this HUD reference. And then once I have the reference to the HUD, I can add to viewport so it actually puts the widget on screen so we can see it. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to define the score, because right now if we spawn the HUD, all you're going to see is null, right? So I want to pull off this pin here, and I can call that set score function that we just defined. And then I have to pass in the values for the player 1 and player 2 score. Now 0, 0 is obviously correct, but we have those stored, so we might as well just insert them here. And then we can come into our delay and then continue spawning the projectile. And now that we have the heads-up display as a reference, if you notice back in our score code, we were printing a string to actually say what the player score is. So we can actually select this and delete that now. And instead, we can just grab our HUD reference, do a get on it, and then we can pull off that into a update score. And then we can duplicate that, because depending on which player scores, we're still going to want to update the score, and then basically go from there. So we'll hook this up here. You can also hold shift and just click pins to connect them. All right, so when player 1 scores, we increment player 1's score so we can pass this into the player 1 value there, but we need to give player 2's existing score, like so. And then for player 2, we increment, the player 2 score, so we'll pass that into the player 2 slot, and then we will hook in the player 1 slot here. And then if I did that right, we can compile, save, we can hit play, and now we can see the score is displayed. I'll get out of the way on this one. And we'll see that player 2 got a point, player 1 got a point, player 2 got another point, and you can see that the score system is working correctly there. Alright everyone, I think we'll cut it here, but in the next vid we'll work on creating a spin and boost move for the players to use, and also a pause menu for our game. And as always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one.